Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert drought forecast. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandrie. Let's take a look at the latest drought monitor. Extreme, severe, and moderate drought all increased. Severe drought is up about 2%, while extreme drought jumped nearly 8%, especially in Pitkin and Eagle counties, where conditions went from severe to extreme. Right now, more than half of the state is experiencing some level of drought. It was a dry week across much of the western slope, but we did see some moisture on the plains, just enough for a slight improvement from moderate drought to abnormally dry conditions in Yuma and Kit Carson counties. In a state where every drop truly matters, smart water reuse is no longer optional, it's essential. Joining us is Dr. Sybil Sharvelle, a professor and researcher at Colorado State University and the technical director of WaterTap, the Water Technology Acceleration Platform based at CSU Spur in Denver. Dr. Sharvelle, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with the big picture. What's fit for purpose water use, and why is it such an important concept in a state like Colorado?
Fit for purpose water use, I like to call right water for the right use. So that means that we can think about taking multiple different water sources and treating those to be used for different purposes. Like we can take water and use it for irrigation of landscape or irrigation of food crops or flushing toilets, or treat it all the way to potable quality. And as you can imagine, the quality of water that we need for those different uses is different. And the level of treatment is also different across different types of water sources. So water sources could include gray water, which is water from showers and hand wash sinks and laundry, or wastewater, which is all of the water from your home, including toilet water, or storm water, which is the water that runs off after storm events in urban areas. So all of those different sources have very different qualities, and all of the end uses I talked about, like potable to toilet flushing, et cetera, have different requirements in terms of meeting health targets. So when we talk about right water for the right use, it's the right level of treatment of water for the purpose of the use, depending on the quality of the source water. This is really important because it allows us to use different water sources and use those for different purposes and tailor those uses based on what may be most appropriate, economically feasible, and best kind of choice for a particular application. And this really enables us to make use of our local water sources and decrease our reliance on imported water sources and be most efficient as possible in our urban areas with how we're using water. So this is really important in Colorado, where we really strive to be as efficient as possible with our water, and we're dealing with a lot of potential gaps between our demand and supply.
Now, WaterTap is a really unique facility. How does the lab differ from a traditional research lab, and what types of water sources are you testing and reusing?
Thanks. So the WaterTap Technology Accelerator Platform was really designed to facilitate larger scale treatment of water. And the really unique thing about the lab is the access to different water sources on site. We test systems around 1,000 gallons per day. If you can imagine, in a typical research laboratory, we would be testing systems that are around maximum of 5 gallons per day. So we're really working on demonstration systems in this laboratory. We have on-site access to multiple water sources that include gray water from a locker room where there's showers and hand wash sinks where we collect that water. We also collect water from the rooftop of the building, which is a pretty large source on that site. We collect storm water from a 28-acre area that surrounds the facility. So we're collecting water that runs off from roads, parking lots, et cetera, and being able to test and treat that on site. So those are 3 water sources that we have readily available, but we also have storage tanks where we can bring off-site sources of water in. We've worked a little bit with some produced water. We've also worked with recycled water as well, potentially. So lots of potential for different water sources to be tested on site and at larger scale, so that kind of demonstration scale that's more relevant for real world applications.
Now, can you give an example of how water taps work as helping reduce demand on potable water in real communities?
Yeah, I think that the demonstrations that we have in place for using roof runoff and gray water really serve as a kind of real world application that many of the cities are looking to and that are interested in doing this. They can see what we're doing, think about the regulatory aspects of it, and be able to think about how they could implement these kinds of systems in their cities to reduce demand on traditional water supplies and make use of these local on-site water sources.
Now, how do you ensure that these alternative water sources like gray water or storm water can be reused safely without compromising public health?
That's a great question. There's been a lot of work in the last decade on fit for purpose water systems and what the level of treatment should be for those systems. Actually, in 2017, I chaired a panel that developed a framework for risk-based guidance for on-site water systems and looked at stormwater, gray water, roof runoff. And just like I was describing before, when we think about those different qualities of those sources, all of those have different pathogen loads. So pathogens are the microbial constituents that can make us ill. So there are human pathogens potentially in all of those different sources. And so what that work really did was to look at what is the load of pathogens in those sources and what's the level of treatment that's needed to ensure acceptable level of risk for use. So there's a lot of good guidance and frameworks available now for fit for purpose water and how much treatment it requires. But also very important to that, to add to that, is the monitoring component and making sure that we're monitoring in real time parameters that can tell us about how the systems are performing. And our lab can really advance how we monitor systems and correlate kind of the performance of those to how the systems are working to remove pathogens. So that's a really important piece of this. And there's a lot of good guidance out there in terms of level of treatment and advancing the monitoring capabilities for real-time and autonomous control of these systems.
Now, we only have about a minute left, but how do you see fit-for-purpose reuse scaling up in Colorado and beyond, especially as drought and climate pressure increases?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can expand this. I think that there'll be always an integration of sort of municipal scale systems that take and treat water for these purposes, and then smaller scale building scale systems. And I think a huge opportunity lies in new development, which have a lot of new development happening in our state with all the population growth. And there's a big opportunity there to see how those new development areas can make use of local water sources on site.
Well, Dr. Sharvelle, thank you for your insight and for the critical work you're doing to help Colorado make every drop count. To learn more about Water Tap and CSU's One Water Solution Institute, visit owsi.coloradostate.edu. And we will see you back here next week for your First Alert Drought Report.